Hey guys, what's up there? John from fly8mikealpha.com. And just a few days ago, I was flying with my buddy Eli, and we were heading on the downwind for 3-1 out of Venice. It's a little confusing. It's a little distracting. It's easy to start following the beach instead of start following the true downwind pattern, flying a true rectangular pattern. And so I saw the perfect opportunity to go ahead and teach them a little bit about best glide speed, especially when you have a raging headwind down the runway and you have a heck of a tailwind on downwind. Because ultimately, best glide speed is not really your best glide speed when there's any sort of wind involved.
You think if the engine quit here that you'd be able to make the runway?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Alright, let's see what we got. We got a pretty stout headwind.
Pretty stout tailwind, so I would start turning.
Yeah.
Venice traffic, Cessna 183 number whiskey at Suncoast, and we're going to taxi to
Alright, we got
Charlie
everything full power. Everything's good.
231 via
Aim
Charlie
for those numbers. Aim for that
Delta.
threshold. Not the EMAS,
Yeah,
but aim for the threshold.
Venice traffic.
Good. Keep that speed right around 90. I got
80,
your radio for you.
85.
Venice traffic, Warrior 86 Echo, simulated engine out to runway 31, left base to 31, Venice traffic. Keep that nose low. You got a really good headwind now. Keep it a little faster than 90. You're going to have to make the runway. Yep. Best
Even
glide
faster than your...
A little faster than best glide. That's right. Yep. If you fly best glide, it won't be technically your best glide speed. So
I
a little faster.
still got flaps to glow.
Yep. It'll probably be a no flap landing. Keep that nose lower. Keep
No
lowering
flap
that
landing?
nose. Yep. Keep lowering.
You don't want to put 25 in?
Well, we'll see
The
where we
slowest.
wind up height-wise. Keep lowering that nose. Lower that nose. There you go. Nice. 95 to 100. Perfect. Get established over the runway. You can go 10 flap here. Go your first notch. Now you go ahead and start flying a little bit more normal speed. 95 to 90. Go second notch. Good. Look down that runway. Look down the runway. All the way outside. There you go. Keep her coming down. Keep her coming down. Start to flare. Hold her off. Hold her off. Very nice.
Sweet.
Flaps up. Clear right.
Alright, clear left.
So let's go ahead and break this down now of exactly what we did here. So we're on the downwind for runway 31 when I went ahead and got the bright idea to pull the throttle back on Eli. And the winds were 320 at 17, gusting 25. So we were moving along on the downwind at a pretty good clip. We had a heck of a tailwind. So as soon as I pulled the throttle back, I immediately told him, hey, you got to start turning right now because the airplane is drifting further and further away from the runway. The longer you're in the air, the further downwind of the runway you're going to get blowing. So you need to start aiming for it right away. And don't aim for the threshold. Really, you should be aiming for the middle or even the far end of the runway, knowing that you're going to get blowing downwind and have plenty of runway in front of you to land on. Plus, you're going to be landing with a very slow ground speed because of that headwind. Now, you're saying, why would I aim for the end of the runway? I want to land before the end. Well, first of all, you're going to get blowing downwind of the runway. Second of all, you'd rather always land on the runway and roll off and hit the bushes or trees at the end going 20 miles an hour than you would to aim for the beginning of the runway and wind up short and hit the seawall going 80 miles an hour or 90. When you have a strong wind to take into account for your best glide speed. So let's say our best glide speed in this airplane for round math is 90 miles per hour. So instead of flying 90 miles per hour, as a general rule of thumb, I'll usually add about half of the wind factor. So with the wind about 20 knots, I'll add about 10 knots to that. And the reason is, imagine your best glide speed is that 90 miles an hour that we were talking about. Imagine you're going into a 90 mile an hour headwind and your engine quits. And so you immediately pitch for 90 miles per hour like your instructor told you to, and you aim for a field. But to your dismay, that field's not getting any closer. You're just going straight down at a nice slow descent rate of about probably 600 to 800 feet, maybe 1,000 feet a minute. Now, why isn't that field not getting any closer? You're flying your best glide speed. Well, with the headwind, it's fighting against you. So your airspeed is 90 miles an hour. The headwind is 90 miles per hour. The airplane will not glide anywhere. So your best glide speed just became your worst glide speed. The only thing worse than that would be to slow down and induce more drag on the airplane and wind up going backwards. Now, obviously, we don't have a 90 mile per hour wind here, but the concept still applies. When you're going into a strong headwind, you're going to need to increase your best glide speed slightly to actually make forward progress towards the airport at your best rate. Now, what is that best rate? Like I said, I use that half of the wind. I'll usually, if the wind's 20 knots, I'll add half of that to it. So I'll fly 10 knots faster. There's no specific rhyme or reason. It's going to differ for each airplane. It's really complicated aerodynamics that we don't have time to worry about as pilots, especially when the engine's not running. So just know this. When you have a headwind, you're going to need to fly a little faster. If you happen to have a tailwind and you're gliding towards a field, perhaps you could fly a little slower. Yeah, you might induce a little drag on the airplane, but if it's bringing you closer to your slowest sink speed, so in terms of a glider, oftentimes best glide speed might be 50 miles per hour and lowest sink speed might be 40 miles per hour. So it takes really knowing your airplane, and the longer wingspan you have, typically the slower the airplane can fly and sink less. If you're flying something like a Cherokee with a nice short wingspan, the slower you fly, you're going to induce a ton of drag on that airplane and it's going to sink like a rock on you. Other things we did here is we did not put in flaps until we absolutely had the runway made, and we just made a constant rate turn towards the runway. I emphasize constant rate here. We didn't fly any sort of a base leg. I would rather come in high, like I said, and land further down the runway and roll off the end. We have a perfectly good stopway, 2,000 feet of grass, after the runway ends. I don't want to wind up short hitting the trees at the beginning. Now, even though you're getting close to the trees, it may be your initial reaction as a human being to pull back a little bit and try not to hit them, try to stretch that glide, it won't work. I would totally rather clip the trees and knock the squirrel out of the top of them at 90 miles per hour and land with a twig in my landing gear and have enough energy to kind of pull up at the last little minute and hop over those trees and fly to the scene of the crash under control than to pull back, stretch the glide, slow the airplane down, and then I don't have any choice as to where I put the airplane, where it's going to crash. Anytime the airplane's going to contact the ground, you want to be in control of it. You want to be making that decision. You will probably make a better decision than the airplane will on its own. If airplanes flew better contacting the ground in an uncontrolled state, we would just let go every time we landed. But we don't do that. We fly the airplane all the way onto the ground, and we continue flying it after the wheels touch the ground. We're always flying the airplane. You want to do the same thing if you're going to be landing off airport, if you're going to be landing in trees, bushes, the ocean, whatever it is. Keep flying the airplane. Never let it stop flying, and make the wheels touch, make the airplane touch whatever it's going to crash into while it is still flying, while the airplane is relatively level. People survive car crashes on the highway all the time at highway speeds, but they don't survive cars falling off of a cliff from 20 or 50 or 100 feet and hitting the ground. Same thing will happen with your airplane. If you try to stretch the glide, the airplane will drop and hit the ground from 20 or 50 or 100 feet. If you crash the airplane at 70 or 80 miles per hour, there's a chance that you might walk away with that, especially if you have shoulder straps equipped in the airplane. Fly the airplane all the way to the scene of the crash. In this case, we're lucky enough to have a runway in front of us. We kept our speed up. We made that continuous turn towards the runway. It was a continuous turn. No base leg, not wasting any distance, but more importantly, continuous turn, meaning you were subconsciously receiving information to your brain from your eyeballs telling you what rate of turn it was going to take to line up the airplane with the runway, and you could make the minimum bank angle possible to maintain maximum lift coefficient, maximum vertical lift with your wing. It's okay to make banks of 10, 20, 30 degrees engine out. I don't really like going steeper than that unless I absolutely have to. As you go steeper than that, drag increases exponentially. But you still want to make the shallowest bank possible to get your airplane turned back towards that runway, maybe steeper at first to get the nose brought around into the wind, and then shallower towards the end when you know you've made it. As we did here, as we came across the trees, we shallowed our bank angle and let the airplane drift on over to the center line, maintaining as much altitude and energy in the airplane as possible, as much potential energy as possible, delaying putting in the flaps. Then once we knew we had it made, let's put the flaps in, let's make this look more like a normal landing. And look at this, we ended up landing just past the aiming points, just over 1,000 feet down the runway the wheels touch, with another 4,000 feet to go, plus another 2,000 feet of grass at the end. We had over a mile to get the airplane stopped. I would have much rather made that turn even sooner and aimed for the end of the runway and landed halfway down the runway with only 2,000 or 3,000 feet remaining. I would have rather landed in the last 1,000 feet of the runway and got the airplane stopped and had 4,000 feet of runway behind me, knowing that I cleared all my obstacles, rather than land on brick one at the threshold and have 5,000 feet of useless runway in front of me. Obviously, the airplane's going to stop, especially with that 20-knot headwind, in 1,000 feet or less of runway or grass. Hopefully this concept makes sense to you guys of increasing your speed with a headwind, maybe decreasing it slightly with a tailwind. Really think about what best glide really is for the scenario that you are in. Start thinking, start being a pilot. not someone who just recites random book knowledge from a POH and hopes and prays that that works for them and keeps them safe. If you have any questions on this topic, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, or better yet, go online to our online forums at fly8mikealpha.com, click on the forum tab at the top of the page, and post your questions in there where you'll get direct answers from our CFIs. No trolls allowed. Check out the private pilot, instrument pilot, and commercial pilot ground schools online at fly8mikealpha.com. Take a quick look at our Patreon page. There's always awesome deals posted on there for our Patreon supporters. And as always, guys, if you can't fly every day, then fly@mikealpha.com. We will see you all next time. Be safe out there.